Have you ever noticed how some people move through life like they're untouchable? They lie to your face, they manipulate the narrative behind your back, and they smile while they're twisting the knife, fully convinced that there is no bill to pay for the chaos they've caused. They think they've gotten away with it. They look at your pure heart, your loyalty, and your silence, and they mistake it for weakness. They genuinely believe that because they weren't caught in the act, they've successfully dodged the consequences. But here is the terrifying reality they are about to face. Karma isn't a theory, it's a law. And unlike human justice, it doesn't need a courtroom. It doesn't wait for a judge, and it certainly doesn't care about their excuses. It is patient. It is precis. And when it finally arrives, it hits with a force that makes their initial betrayal look like a whisper. You didn't need to clap back. You didn't need to lower yourself to their level or spend your precious energy seeking revenge. Why? Because the universe doesn't let injustice slide. Every seed of poison they planted in your life is currently germinating in theirs. You kept your hands clean, and now that very dirt they threw at you is starting to bury them. It's a heavy, ugly thing when karma finally shows up at the door. But it is always, without exception, on time. You see, there is a fundamental law in this life that dictates you cannot plant pain and expect to harvest peace. You cannot scatter misery in someone else's garden and think your own will blossom with joy. That's not how the architecture of truth operates. Every single lie they whispered, every moment they hoped for your downfall, and every time they played the victim while tearing you apart in the shadows, it was all recorded, not by man, but by a force that watches over justice, like a lion watches its prey. The irony is that they thought your silence was a surrender. They thought your forgiveness meant you had forgotten, but they didn't realize that energy never dies. It only transforms. It builds up behind the scenes, waiting for the perfect moment to crash down. The harvest doesn't always come when we're screaming for it, but it always comes when the fruit is ripe. And make no mistake, the harvest for what they did to you is coming. It's not just going to be a taste of what they gave you. It's going to be multiplied, pressed down, and poured right back into their own lives. They sowed chaos, and now that chaos is knocking on their door with a vengeance. You didn't need to expose them because their own actions are doing the work for you. While they were watching for your downfall, karma was quietly preparing their own. Have you ever seen someone who's done wrong look like they're winning? They're laughing, they're shining, they're moving forward as if their hands are spotless. But look closer. Slowly, the cracks start to appear. Their peace begins to slip. Their connections start to crumble. The very lies they used to climb are now starting to choke them. That isn't a coincidence. It's a consequence. You can't run from a harvest you've spent months or years cultivating. You can't pray away the damage you willingly caused to another soul. They messed with someone they never should have touched, not because you're superior, but because you were protected. Your heart was never meant to be a playground for broken people, and now they're feeling the heat of every cold word and every dirty deed. Don't mistake their current silence for peace. That silence is the sound of the mirror turning around. It's the sound of them being forced to sit with their own reflection. And let me tell you, it isn't a pretty sight. You're not the one delivering this lesson. They're learning it from the very life they tried to sabotage. The roots of the bitterness they poured out have taken hold in their own soil, and now they have to drink from that same cup, drop by drop. But look at you. You didn't let their darkness dim your light. You stood firm when you were hurting. You kept your dignity when they were trying to strip it away. And because of that, you are walking proof that you can survive a betrayal without becoming a monster yourself. You are rising, not just in position, but in purpose. You took the pain, and through sheer force of will, you turned it into power. There was a time, wasn't there, when that pain almost finished you. A time when you sat in the dark and questioned everything you're worth, your purpose, even your sanity. The betrayal didn't just hurt, it cut into the very core of who you are. The silence of those you trusted screamed louder than any insult, and the weight of it all felt like it was going to crush the life out of you. They tried to destroy you, but not with weapons. They used words, they used manipulation, and they chose the exact moment you were most vulnerable to abandon you. But here is the massive miscalculation they made. They thought that by breaking you, they could end you. They didn't realize that they were just breaking the shell to reveal the diamond inside. That pain didn't destroy you. It refined you. It lit a fire in your spirit that no amount of cold-hearted betrayal could ever put out. You took every single tear, every midnight heartbreak, and every moment of being overlooked, and you used them as fuel. People in this world constantly underestimate the power of a wounded soul. They think that suffering makes you weak, that pain steals your edge. But they are wrong. Pain is the ultimate birthplace of transformation. While they were busy celebrating your downfall and telling stories about your failure, you were being rebuilt, not in the public eye, not on a social media feed, but in the sacred, heavy silence of your own solitude. That is where the real work happens. You learn to sit with your wounds instead of running from them. You looked your trauma in the eye and, piece by piece, you put yourself back together. But you didn't rebuild the old version of yourself, the one they knew, the one they could manipulate. No, you built someone entirely new. You built someone they will never be able to recognize, let alone touch. The old you would have begged for an apology that was never coming. The old you would have tried to make peace with people who found comfort in your misery. But that version is gone. Now, you realize that you never needed their validation to be whole, and you never needed their permission to be great. They tried to make you feel small because they were terrified of the greatness they saw in you. They tried to dim your light because they couldn't stand how it exposed their own shadows. But instead of collapsing, you rose. You stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started saying, thank God this happened for me. Because that pain was your introduction to your true self. When life brings you to your knees, you've only got two choices. Stay down and be a victim, or rise with a sovereign mindset. You chose to rise. That pain taught you the beauty of boundaries. It taught you that no is a complete sentence, and that your peace is far more valuable than your popularity. They were hoping you'd turn bitter. They were waiting for you to become cold, manipulative, and angry, just like them. They wanted to pull you down into the mud so they could feel better about being dirty. But you flipped the script. You turned your wounds into wisdom and your scars into armor. You didn't let the poison enter your heart. You let it purify your vision. You stopped being reactive to their nonsense and started being intentional with your power. You stopped chasing closure from people who are committed to lying, and you started creating your own clarity. That is the ultimate vibe shift. That is the power of someone who chooses healing over hate. They have no idea about the battles you fought behind closed doors. They see the smile now. They see the success, and they see the unshakable confidence. But they didn't see the process that forged it. You earned this peace. You fought for this healing. You walked through the fire, and now you carry the flames in your spirit. That's why you walk with your head held high. Not because life has been easy, but because you know exactly what it cost you to get here. Your power didn't come from comfort. It was born in the rejection, the isolation, and the moments you were misunderstood. Every tear you cried has watered the harvest of your new life. You didn't just survive the storm, you graduated from it. You didn't just take the hit, you alchemized it. You took the very poison they meant for your destruction and you turned it into your purpose. There were so many moments where it looked like the end. But looking back now, can't you see the divine strategy? You thought you were being buried, but in reality, you were being planted. God allowed that chaos to enter your life, not to crush you, but to change the very fabric of your existence. There is a specific type of elevation that only comes after a total breaking. It comes in the isolation. It comes in the fiery trials that test the quality of your soul. The divine knew that certain people were nothing more than expensive distractions, holding you back from the throne you were meant to occupy. So, he allowed the disruption. He allowed the betrayal. He let them walk away because they weren't qualified to go where you were headed. If they had treated you right, you would have settled for a life that was far too small for you. If they had been loyal, you would have stayed in an environment that was slowly stifling your genius. So, the universe allowed them to mishandle you. It allowed them to count you out and turn their backs. Oh, so you would finally be forced to turn your life around. You thought it was a punishment, but it was a promotion. Every closed door that shattered your heart was actually saving your life. Every person who walked out was clearing the runway for your takeoff. You were being emptied of what was never meant to stay, making room for a blessing so large that your old life would undivide the space to hold it. Pain has a brutal way of exposing the truth. It shows you who is real, what actually matters, and most importantly, it shows you exactly who you are when everything is stripped away. You learn to lean on a power greater than yourself. You learn that your peace isn't a gift from people. It's a decree from within. And now, look at you. You aren't just wiser, you are dangerous to the status quo. You are sharper, more focused, and you move with a slow gravity that commands respect without saying a word. Every level of this life demands a more refined version of you, and that refinement only happens under pressure. The storm didn't come to kill you. It came to clear the path. It shook your foundation so you'd stop building on the wrong soil. What they meant for evil, the divine used for your elevation. That is why you are still standing. That is why you are still rising while they are still stuck in the same cycles of gossip and greed. They thought they had the power to break your destiny, but they didn't realize who you were connected to. They saw the surface, but the Creator saw the calling. You graduated from the struggle. The version of you emerging now is a threat to everything that tried to destroy you, because you are no longer operating from a place of hurt. You are moving in pure, unadulterated power. You are no longer seeking approval. You are walking in alignment. Every step you take now carries the authority of someone who has been through the valley and did unfold. So, the next time you look back at the wreckage, don't you dare ask why. Instead, say thank you. Thank the heavens for the doors that slammed shut. Thank them for the people who were removed. Thank them for the breakdowns that forced the breakthroughs. Without those moments, you wouldn't be the legend you are becoming. The pain was simply the price of entry for the empire you are building. You are the living proof that what was meant to destroy you was actually sent to develop you. You aren't behind, you aren't forgotten, and you certainly aren't broken. You are in the middle of a divine positioning. They laughed, didn't they? They laughed when they thought you were down for good. Behind closed doors, they mocked your struggle and whispered about your downfall like it was the final chapter of your life. They treated your pain like a punchline and shared your business as if it were nothing more than cheap gossip. But here is what they didn't realize. The world has a long memory, and life does not forget a debt. They thought their laughter was a victory, but they were actually just auditioning for their own humbling. See, karma doesn't always move on your schedule, but it always moves with surgical precision. The very same stage they used to mock you will become the stage where they are forced to witness your elevation. When someone goes out of their way to mock your fall, they think they're operating in the safety of the shadows. They think the world won't catch up with the dirt they've done. But life has a spectacular way of flipping the script. Those private conversations they had about you, they will live to see those same words come back to haunt them. And it'll be in front of the very people they were trying to impress. That is the nature of divine justice. It doesn't need to scream or beg for attention. It simply delivers the truth in a way that cannot be denied. And when it hits harder because it comes with the weight of consequence. Some people didn't just want to see you fail, they needed to see it. Your success was a threat to their ego, and your light exposed their lack of progress, so they celebrated your stumble. But while they were laughing, you were learning. While they were mocking, you were maturing. You took the silence they gave you and used it to sharpen your sword. You built an inner strength that they couldn't even fathom. They mistook your quietness for surrender. But what they missed was that silence is where a sovereign mind prepares for the throne. And now, you're walking differently. You're moving with a purpose that confuses them because, by their logic, you should have stayed broken. Now, karma is starting to whisper their name, slowly, quietly, but with a terrifying consistency. Their foundation is beginning to crack. The opportunities they thought were guaranteed are vanishing. The peace they pretended to have is crumbling. This is the law of the harvest. When you build your joy on someone else's pain, your house is built on sand. They were busy pointing fingers while you were busy building character. And now, the divine isn't just blessing you in secret, he's putting your breakthrough on display, not for your ego, but for their enlightenment. Some lessons can't be taught with words. They have to be witnessed. Your hands stayed clean. You had every reason to strike back. Every reason to drag their name through the mud just like they did yours. The flesh wanted to send that text, McKay that, post and expose every lie they told. But you chose the higher road. You realized that dirty hands only lead to a polluted heart, and you refused to let their mess stain your destiny. You understood that real power doesn't scream. It moves in a quiet, unstoppable force. By refusing to play their game, you won the war. You chose to protect your energy instead of feeding their chaos. And now your harvest is speaking louder than any argument ever could. Now, look at your life. Look at the peace you fought for and the sovereignty you've reached. You didn't just survive a storm. You became the atmosphere. The reason they can touch you anymore. ISNT. Because you're re-hiding it. S because your VA reached a frequency they even perceive. You have moved beyond the need for their apology, and you have surpassed the desire for their downfall. You've realized that the greatest form of justice isn't watching them fail, but becoming so successful, so healed, and so focused that their very existence becomes irrelevant to your story. That is the ultimate vibe shift. That is the moment you truly step onto your throne. They're still staring at the door you walked through, waiting for you to come back and beg for a seat. But what they don't understand is that you didn't just leave the room. You bought the building. You have outgrown the version of yourself that allowed them to mishandle you. You have shed the skin of the victim and stepped into the mantle of the victor. While they are still busy trying to justify their past actions, you are busy engineering a future that they won't even be invited to witness. You've traded their chaos for your clarity, and their lies for your legacy. Let this be a warning to anyone who thinks they can play with a heart that is protected by the divine. You might think you're re-winning in the short term, but you are creating a debt that you cannot afford to pay. Karma is a patient collector. It doesn't care about your social status or your excuses. It only cares about the energy you've put out into the world. And to you, the one who was wronged, remember this. Your value was never in their hands. It was always within you. They didn't take your worth. They just failed to recognize it. And that failure is now their greatest regret. The cycle is closed. The lesson is learned. The bridge to your past has been burned, and the light from that fire is illuminating the path to your destiny. You are no longer waiting for life to get better. You are making it better. You are no longer asking for permission to be powerful. You are simply being powerful. You are the architect, the sovereign, and the legend in the making. Your hands are clean, your spirit is sharp, and your future is limitless. The debt they threw didn't bury you, it became the very soil you used to grow your empire. Your time is coming. Keep believing, keep fighting. Don't just watch. Go out and prove them wrong. Thank you for being part of the journey. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.